everybody, Frank Kern here, and what do you know? Look at this, a blank white video. Isn't that exciting? Yes, this is the module where we just use our imagination. Ha! Not really. Okay, so what I want to do right now is on this blank white screen here, I'm going to put a process map for us to operate from during this module. So what this is, I'm going to give you a little walkthrough of how our process is going to work up to the end of this module, the end of the indoctrination sequence. So as you know, we begin by sending traffic to a registration page, and because you've done the recon worksheet, and because we've done the situations and solutions worksheet, we have a really good grasp on the copy to use on that registration page. We have a really good grasp on the hooks of our webinars and how we're going to help them. So the function of this week, of course, is to get them to show up and add a tremendous value to their lives prior to their even attending, so they are happy, they have benefited from their relationship with us, we are the good guys, and of course, all of that should result in them being more likely to buy our stuff, which is great. So we sent some traffic to the registration page, and then from there, of course, they see the liquidator offer. Now, we built that liquidator offer in the first module. We built that sales pitch using my template in the first module. So we built a liquidator offer sales page in the first module. Really did a lot of work in the first module. I probably could have split that up into 2 modules. Well, guess what? This module is going to be a little easier. So that's the good news, all right? So immediately upon them registering, they get that liquidator offer, and what else happens? You remember? Of course, we send them instantly their confirmation email plus another link to the liquidation offer. And I gave you that template in the last module, if you'll recall, right? So that goes to that, of course, that points right back to that liquidator offer. And the next thing we have is our indoctrination sequence. And that's really what this module is about. So here's the way the indoctrination sequence works. It's usually a 2-part sequence. And on day 1 of that sequence, it can even be the next day after they register, it doesn't really matter, they get video number 1. And remember, I told you about video number 1. It has that what, why, when formula. I'll walk you through that some more in this module, but basically it's here's what to expect on the upcoming webinar, here's why it's important to you, here's why it's different from other things you might have seen, and here's when it's going to be. And the purpose of that is just to have them be familiar with you and to resell them on attending. But that's not enough. We want to also add a lot of value to them. So day 2's video is where we provide some content in advance, right? So that is what your indoctrination sequence looks like. And then, of course, prior to the webinar happening, we have our day of webinar reminder sequence. I'm going to show you how that works as well in this module. So the way it works is you send them a reminder in the morning, usually about 2 or 3 hours beforehand. Then you say, actually about 3 hours beforehand. Then you send them a 2-hour reminder, then a 30-minute reminder, and then a starting now reminder. And of course, after that, we have the webinar, and did they attend? We have a little decision tree. Did they attend? If they attended, or if they did not attend rather, we re-invite them to attend our next webinar. We do not send a million replays to train them to never show up, right? And we'll talk about that later. And then, of course, if they do attend, we have another decision here, which is, did they buy? If they buy, then we don't send any more stuff. We give them what they bought, and maybe we begin a back-end sales sequence. But as we know, because of the laws of nature, right, that most people who attend a webinar aren't going to buy. Remember, we kind of threw this around a lot. It was, look, if most people bought from a webinar, we would have webinars that converted over 51%, which is just possible, but very, very rare, you know? So, of course, most of them aren't going to buy. So what do we do? Well, after that, we have something called the objection sequence, and then something called a countdown sequence. So I'm going to show you that in our next module. So this module, today, we are going to focus on that 4th column there from the left. That is the 3rd column from the left. What am I saying? We're going to focus on that and the 4th column. So we're going to focus in this module on our indoctrination sequence and on the day of webinar reminder sequence. And this is going to be pretty simple because I'm going to give you some templates, I'm going to give you some email templates, and I'm going to show you how to do these videos. So the most work you're really going to have to do this week is use my email templates to model and make your own emails with, of course, for reminder series and such, and then make your indoctrination videos and put them on a web page. We've already learned how to do that, so we know that's pretty simple, right? So no reason under the sun not to get this done this week. It'd be silly not to. So let's get it done and get you a good webinar campaign and get you some money. That's why we're here, right? Okay, cool. So let's get started. So let's talk about the good old indoctrination sequence. Now, the purpose of this sequence is, of course, to deliver results in advance, increase goodwill, build trust, establish authority, and ultimately sell more stuff in a way that's cool. So you can really, if you want to, have lots of videos in your indoctrination sequence. I think it's a good idea to have at least two. One of them is what we're going to go over right now, and then I'll show you how to build the second one in another training here in this module. Well, let's talk about video number one and go ahead and get that sucker knocked out. So the purpose of video number one is to foster familiarity. The reason that's important is because the more familiar they are with you, the more they feel they know you, the more they are likely to trust you, and therefore what? The more receptive they're going to be to your message, and the more likely they're going to be to buy without worrying about whether or not you're some weird dude on the internet that is in the middle of some third world country selling their credit card numbers to the mafia or something, which I certainly hope you're not, right? Another thing we want to do is reassure their decision to attend and resell them on attending. Meaning just because they registered doesn't mean they're going to show up. We really got to keep them going. That registration was just step one. And how we're going to do this is we're going to use the ever so easy to say quickly www framework, which I really need to come up with a better way to describe that. So here's how it works. Yes, that is a lot of W's. And so as you know, it is the what, why, when framework. And incidentally, these four categories here don't have to be used in order. They simply need to be used together. So you could do why number one, then what, then why number two, then when, or do it all backwards. It doesn't matter. We just need to hit all of these bases, right? So you don't have to be too cut and dry with this. I'll give you an example in a minute. So let's talk about the what. What we're going to do in this is you want to tell them what you're going to be covering on the webinar, and the easiest way to do that is to first state the underlying theme like this. You can say, hey everybody, this is Rick James, and I just want to again thank you for registering for our upcoming webinar. You know, this webinar is all about X so you can Y. Right? Remember those magic words, so you can. They're so very, very beneficial in selling and persuasion because that's all anyone cares about is what's in it for them, right? So if I were to be using that framework, that language pattern in a indoctrination video about the webinar that I use to sell you this class, I might say something like, hey everybody, Frank Kern here. First of all, thanks so much for registering for this upcoming webinar. I'm going to be showing you on this webinar all about how to create A to Z webinar campaigns that sell so you can generate more revenue from your webinars without being too salesy or too pushy or behaving in a way that turns people off, right? So that's one way to do it. The other part of that framework is you could say, in this webinar, I'm going to show you exactly how I did X and Y, which is really the way I positioned this training that you got on to persuade you to purchase this class. So if you recall, it was, hey, in this webinar, I'm going to show you exactly how I sold $2.4 million worth of goods and services on webinars in 2 short years part-time, right? So either one of those frameworks will work. You could potentially combine them if you like to. Either way you decide to do it is pretty good. And the next thing we're going to do, like immediately after that, is you're going to identify who the webinar is for, using the good old so if you language pattern. So an example of that would be, I'll start from the top. So, hey everybody, this is Frank Kern. Now I'm on bullet point number 2 there, right above this one. So, hey everybody, this is Frank Kern. First of all, thank you so much for registering for our upcoming training. You know, on this webinar, I'm going to be showing you exactly how I sold $2.4 million of goods and services in just 2 years, relatively part-time. So, and now notice I'm segueing immediately into the so if you pattern. So if you want to generate a really, really responsive list using webinars without looking like everybody else and kind of blending in with the crowd, this is definitely for you. And if you want to establish authority and credibility in your marketplace in as little as one simple webinar, then this is for you. So you can continue with those benefits, right? This is almost like bullet points that you're speaking. And that's how you do that next little chunk of the what phase, right? And the only thing I want to tell you about that is I want you to be aware that you don't want to make unsubstantiated claims here, all right? So you can get a little hypey if you're not careful. So you don't want to say something like, so if you want to make $1,000 per minute with no work, no product, and no list, this is for you. That's not cool. That's not going to get you anywhere. They're not going to believe you. They're going to think you're uncool. And hey, you might have some unwanted attention from dudes that you would rather not be hearing from if you do that, right? So be sure to keep it clean. So we're cool on that? All right, so let's see. Somehow I just jumped back on my screens. There we go. So no unsubstantiated claims, no shenanigans. So that leads us to the next section here. And again, you don't have to do this in order. I'm just showing you what each chunk is. So the other chunk is why number one, which I'm going to say why this is important, right? So we have two why segments, and this is number one, which is why this is important. So here, you're going to tell them why it's important to them right now. And an easy formula to follow is simply to refer to your situation solution worksheet from Module 1. Remember we did that brainstorming thing, like all the situations that they could be going through that's troubling them, and that's going to help you come up with the content of your webinar, and it helped you come up with the bullet points for your registration page, and it kind of jarred some ideas on some liquidator offer concepts and everything. Well, right, one more time, right here is where that is going to come in very, very handy. So that is the first chunk of why number one is here's why this is important to you. And of course, I'm going to give you an example of this here in a second. Now, why number two is why this is different from anything you've ever seen, right? Different from other things you've been on. And the reason you want to do this is because your guys, your registrants, are going to be naturally skeptical, and they're jealously going to guard their time. I mean, look, they cannot get it back. So it's between listening to your webinar and watching Seinfeld or something, or looking at boobs on the internet or something else that is universally considered to be more fun than attending a webinar. So we really got to tell them exactly why this is going to be different from the other stuff they've seen in the past, which has all been horrible. Know this to be a fact. They have definitely wasted time on either crappy webinars or crappy sales experiences before. And as a result of that, we're lumped in with everybody else. Like in the beginning to them, we're just another marketer, right? So we really have to take the time to earn their most valuable asset, which is their time. For us to gift, or for them to gift us with that time, is going to take a lot of convincing. So that's why we need to let them know why this is going to be significantly different from the stuff that they've seen before. So in this phase, we're essentially overcoming their skepticism. We want to tell them why this is different, right? And instead of me just sort of yapping about it, I'm going to show you some chunks of my videos here in a minute to go over all of these areas with you. And finally, what we want to do in video number one is we want to tell them when it is. Look, you got to tell them when it is, like a lot, all the time, but you don't want to say it in the video itself. And the reason why is if you say this is going to be held on December 92nd at 3 o'clock, if you say that in your video, you can never use the video again until like a year later for December 92nd at 3 o'clock, you know. Otherwise, you don't have that evergreen asset. So you don't want to say it in the video. You can just write it in your email and also put it on the page below the video if you want to. So the way you do that in the actual video is you say, okay, so listen, I really look forward to seeing you there. Now remember, the webinar is coming up soon. I have gone ahead and put the date and time for you below this video. I've also sent it to you in the email that told you about this very video as well. And of course, I'll remind you beforehand, but please go ahead and while it's fresh in your mind, just set it in your calendar and make the time for it, because you're really going to get a lot out of it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you, and I look forward to talking to you on the webinar. See you soon. So that's how you would end that little chunk right there. So how about this? This little video here has probably gotten in the 10 or 15 minute mark. So what I want to do is jump to the next one where I'm going to now dissect my indoctrination video number one and show you each chunk of it. So I'll show you the what, the why it's important and the why it's different phases, so you can really model them. All right, so that's the end of this one. No homework for now, not yet. Let me show you in the next video exactly how I've done this so you can model it. Okay, go to the next video now. See you in a sec.